And welcome to another Thursday night as we close out the month of June and prepare for Canada Day celebrations tomorrow, independence across Canada, and the 4th of July festivities coming up this weekend. Glad you could join us wherever you may be as we kick off our official season here before we leave you for a few weeks. I'm Brian Bushlack in studio, Leonard and Lorena Landon joining us, and special guests on the way as well from RBAW. First, though, let's get an update from Leonard and Lorena. Where are you this evening?
Well, we're on the North BC coast, about halfway between north end of Vancouver Island and Prince Rupert and Shearwater, and right near the town of Bella Bella. And it's a busy place. So this is probably the busiest marina we've seen since we've been out here. I think we probably snagged one of the last spots here. Lots and lots of boaters, headed both directions, as a matter of fact. A few folks are headed back already from Southeast Alaska. We had one boater here that is getting his boat repaired because he's headed back home after hitting a reef out here, unfortunately. But he's got the boat back in condition again, and he's headed south pretty soon. But that's where we're at right now.
How's the trip been? I know you're out for a few more weeks. Kind of give us an update there.
It's been great. I think we left off in Port McNeill, and before we left, we touched base with the harbor docks there and learned that they're going to be building a new shower and restroom facility, brand new, should be available next year in 2023. So that's good news. And then after departing there, we went across the way to Soyantula. That's a Finnish community. And they are up and running, and it's a very friendly place, nice community to visit. They have what they call the Red Burger Barn. It's right up from the docks. Delicious burgers, by the way, if you're looking for a good burger.
And they have the sign at the harbor indicated that there's a bakery in town, but we didn't have enough time. This tells you how much pressure there is for us to get updates, and that was we needed to get going because Leonard had to propose the bakery. At this point, we can't do a first-hand report on the bakery in Soyantula. If you're out there, anybody that's out there, give us a first-hand report. We're desperately looking for that.
And journey was crossing Queen Charlotte Strait. It was outstanding visibility that day. You could see for miles, but the wind did pick up. Started out 10 to 15 knots and then went to 25 to 37 knots. So it got a little exciting there for a while. We made it safely into London Harbor for anchorage that night.
And this was one of those cases where the Environment Canada forecast really did say it was going to be 10 to 15 knots. And indeed, it was off quite a bit. And then and the fog was a big problem in that one.
So yes, next morning, very thick fog, so much so that we did not want to venture out of the harbor and waited. It burned off in the afternoon, but that's when the winds pick up, the sun comes out and the winds pick up. So we stayed there another night. Next morning, fog again, but the winds were much better for rounding Cape Caution. So we headed out about 11:30 and made it around the Cape. I should mention, while we were in London Harbor, we took the dinghy to Bradley Lagoon. It's a very large lagoon with lots of nooks and crannies and great place to explore. There are overfalls, however, so if you venture into the lagoon, you want to check, be careful of your timing so you can get back, especially if you have a canoe or kayak. So, but that was fun adventure.
Yeah, sounds like.
And let's see.
We'll get to your updates in a sec. You mentioned fog too, and there was a story a couple of days ago about a cruise ship that ran into a chunk of an iceberg known as a growler in fog in Southeast Alaska, and actually had to return back for repairs. How big of a concern is that? I mean, if a 2,000 passenger cruise ship has to turn around, we're talking a chunk of iceberg, about six by 6 feet. I mean, that's got to be concerning if you're out there in your boat, right?
Well, that is, and that's taking your own boat to any of these glaciers, the tidal glaciers, where you do have ice and bergy bits and icebergs in there. that is a concern. And anything that's as big as a 6x6 is way bigger than anything the recreational boaters are going to handle. And for us, it's mainly it's smaller stuff. It's baseball, or excuse me, not baseball, but basketball size stuff that some of those are, most of it is floating, but some of the really dense stuff is just barely below the water, or it's going to skim underneath and it's going to hit the props. And so that is one of the big concerns. And one of the reasons that we're big advocates of taking tour boats, let the local tour boat people take their stuff up there. They're usually aluminum boats and they're equipped for this kind of thing. And they'll know what they're doing. There's one or two glaciers in Southeast Alaska that are approachable by your own private boat. And that's up the Tracy Arm. And that's usually the best one. And indeed, it's the best because there are very few bergy bits in there, but it is a big concern.
Okay. And for those of you joining us tonight, obviously this will be our last show until mid-September as everyone sets out for cruising season. Mark Bunzel, if you're wondering where he is tonight, well, it sounds like he's out of range. Where is he, Leonard and Lorena? Do we know where he's at tonight?
He is reportedly. He's in near Pybus Bay, and so that's kind of on the southeast side of Admiralty Island in Southeast Alaska, kind of between. It's off the Chatham Strait as you're headed back towards Petersburg is where they're headed right now. And there's the only thing that Pybus Bay is a beautiful place, and there's a fishing lodge there that recreational boaters can sometimes join their evening dinners. And so that's one of the big attractions in there. Plus, it's a beautiful area with some great anchorage.
Lots of waterfalls, tremendous waterfalls. So, yeah.
And we had a couple of more updates here.
Yeah, so after making it around Cape Caution, we went into Goose Bay and anchored there. Nice anchorage. It's the site of an old cannery that has been refurbished. And it used to be that boaters could tie up at the dock there and pay a fee to stay overnight. That's no longer the case. It's now a private fishing lodge, so only members only now can tie up there. So boaters should be aware of that. Then we visited Dawson's Landing. It's an old-fashioned general store, mom and pop place. Mom and pop were not there, but their daughter was, and was happy to see us. Masks are still required because, again, this is a remote, very small store used by the few locals that live in the area and by fishing lodges that come to get supplies there.
This is up the Rivers Inlet, and this is one of a very, very popular sport fishing lodge area. You can up and down Rivers Inlet, you'll find a number of sport fishing lodges. And these are in the past, these were fairly rustic places, but over time and as the rates increased for their guests, these are very sophisticated places. The Duncanby Lodge, for instance, is just finishing construction on a 3-story part of rooming part to their building. So this is in addition to the cottages that they have, and it's a very upscale place. It's an interesting area.
And if you happen to be at Dawson's Landing when the Grumman Goose comes in, the seaplane, it's fascinating to watch. Also, the Beaver flies in there, helicopters. It's quite a show of when they're bringing in goods for this general store. It's a fun place to be when that happens.
Hey, Leonard and Lorena, question for you from David, wondering, what kind of boat are you on? Remind us.
So ours is we're a motor vessel, and it's a DeFever, and it's a 47 foot and twin engine John Deere powered. It's a DeFever the boat is designed by Arthur DeFever. Actually, his son-in-law took over the business. Arthur DeFever has passed away, but Arthur DeFever designed thousands of boats, everything from fishing vessels to recreational boats, you name it. And we have proven through some really adverse weather conditions, we have proven that he built a very, very sound boat. We very respect.
They endured some seas and made it home.
Great.
Are,
Off there. Hold
are
on.
we still on?
You are. Yes.
Okay.
Great. The next stop, we went up to Chute Sound and went to the ruins of Namu, which used to be a small town with a very large cannery, and it's now in ruins. It's fascinating to see. We motored past there and found a well-protected anchorage and rock inlet. Here are some drone pictures we took to indicate how large this area was. It was quite the business at the time.
This was such a large community that it was on the main ferry route for BC area. And even today, the charts indicate that there's fuel here. Of course, had a nice big fuel dock, and on the charts today it still says Esso right on there at this location. There's clearly no fuel dock there. There used to be what I call it's Lizzie Cove. It's a floating community done by a community. Their quarters, they lived here, and it was tied to these docks right here. And after the cannery shut down, and they invited guests. You could tie up on your boat. And they had that there for a number of years, a decade or more. And they moved that about 5 or 6 years ago to a small cove near Shearwater called Lizzie Cove. And they're still there right now. This year, 2022, they're still closed for COVID concerns. But if once they're open again, it's a wonderful stop. They grow their own vegetables on their floating residence there. And they're just very self-sufficient, wonderful people.
But as you can see, the cannery is no more. It's part of history.
So when we were a long time ago when we were there, when it was a little bit in not as bad a condition as it is right now, you could come on and you could peek into those warehouses, and there were literally stacks and stacks of empty cans that were ready to be used for canning salmon. A very intriguing spot. Right now, there are a number of danger signs. Don't go near the buildings. Many of these wharf piers are in bad shape right now. And I expect in a few years, they're going to have to do something about cleaning this up. It's pretty dangerous right now.
So from Namu, we went to Codville Lagoon. It's a large bay with actually several bays, nice places to anchor. And then there's a trail that goes to Sugar Lake. We highly recommend it. The trail, partially boardwalk, some muddy areas, so wear your boots. But the lake is beautiful. It has a sandy beach, and it's not the white sand, it's the brown sand. It actually looks like brown sugar, but it's just beautiful. And of course, that's why it's called Sugar Lake. We recommend that hike. It's really nice. Then we headed over to Shearwater, and here we are. And it's the Hausa Nation, First Nation, that purchased Shearwater last year. And we are happy to report that they are doing an excellent job maintaining the facilities. The grounds are beautiful. The services are great. Of course, there's fuel, and they do have 2 hoses labeled potable water and non-potable. So you have that option.
That's our update.
That's our update for this time around. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And to close out, I guess, this half of our season, we've got RBAW's team joining us. Let's fire up those cameras and let's do some intros, Lorena.
We have several RBAW members with us. Andrea Pierantozzi. She served 30 years as a senior executive in technology. She is United States Air Force veteran. She obtained a love for water and boating while growing up in Sarasota, Florida. And she has been Pacific Northwest resident since 2012 and a current boat owner and frequent cruiser. She's a member of Thai Yacht Club, current board of trustees member and former fleet captain, and is a member of Seattle Yacht Club, Seamanship, Education, and Environment Committee member. Kirk Myers is also joining us. He's a longtime Pacific Northwest resident and a lover of recreating on the waters of Puget Sound with his 2 sons. He spent 15 years as a sustainability business leader with companies such as Alaska Airlines and REI. He is an active voter on his vintage Standcraft, the Betty Lou, and serves on the board of the Washington National Park Fund. And Doug Levy, RBAW state lobbyist. He has owned Outcomes by Levy, LLC since October 1991, a lobbying and government affairs consulting practice focusing on representation of municipalities and outdoor recreation associations. He has represented RBAW as a state lobbyist and consultant since 2010. Before starting his lobbying practice, Doug spent 5 years as a reporter for 2 daily newspapers, 5 years as a congressional staffer in Washington, D.C., and 5 years as a government affairs director for the city of Everett. You can find Doug tooling around Lake Washington and Lake Union on his 17-foot Bayliner that is moored at the North Lake Marina in Kenmore. So all 3 very impressive individuals joining us tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. I'm gonna kick us off and give everybody a quick overview of RBAW and kind of what we do, what we're focused on. So I'm gonna share my screen here and bear with me. All righty. So hopefully you should see a beautiful blue picture here with some pretty white boats. Like I said, I would like to just start off with telling you what RBAW, so Recreational Boating Association of Washington, it's a mouthful, so we kind of shorten it to RBAW. Tell you a little bit about kind of where we came from, what we do, and there's a few key projects that my partners here, Kirk and Doug, are going to tell you about. Doug specifically, kind of all the legislative and policy things we're working on. So to start, RBAW has been around for 6 decades. So since about the mid-1950s, we have been focusing on being the voice of Northwest boating and being an advocate for the recreational boater. And not sure if you knew about RBAW or know that we're actually the only organization that focuses solely on recreational boating. So not industry, not commercial, not those other really important things, but just the recreational boater. There are over, I think, 240,000 registered boats in the state of Washington. A little fun fact, over 90% of those are trailerable. So those are folks that are, recreating on the weekends, taking their families out, cruising Puget Sound and going up to Canada and places far north. And those are the folks that we support. For folks that have been around for a while, you might have remembered that RBAW's earlier name was the Puget Sound Interclub Association. Another one started out as really just yacht and boating clubs who got together and felt that they needed some representation, and they got together as groups and they focused on things in Washington that would benefit boaters. The first major impact that the Puget Sound Interclub group had was Susha Island. So back in the mid-50s, Susha was going up for sale, and it was going to have private vacation cabins on it. And they recognized at that time, and boy, the foresight that they had was amazing, that nobody would ever, be able to, walk on to Susha again. They wouldn't be able to take their boat up there and recreate. And they got together, all those clubs, and raised $50,000 and purchased Susha Island. So let that wash over you for a bit. $50,000 back in the mid-50s, and purchased the island and donated it to the state of Washington. So it could be a state-owned public land for all to enjoy. Obviously, you have to have a boat to get there, or a seaplane, I guess. But it really, I struck, I think, a nerve with everybody back then, even at that time, that there are these amazing resources we have access to that maybe sometimes we even take for granted, that they may not be there if they don't stay in the public sector. And so that's what Puget Sound Interclub Group was able to do back in the mid-50s. So fast forward to the early 90s, and they kind of changed the club a bit. They changed the name to the Recreational Boating Association of Washington. And also they opened it up for not just people who were members of boating clubs and yacht clubs, individual members expanded what they were doing. And so as we mentioned, Doug Levy's joining us here. He's our lobbyist for RBAW. So the main focus initially, and still a primary focus of ours today, is the Washington State Legislature. So things happen all the time, even outside of the calendar, the legislative calendar, that can impact recreational boating. So decisions are made, laws are put on the floor to be discussed, and some of those have direct impacts to boating, recreational boating in our state. Some have unintended consequences, and those are the ones that we are proud to kind of stay on top of and watch and read and listen to what's going on, and make sure that we can step in and thank the people that are doing things that help boating, recreational boating in our state, and also jump in on the ones that maybe don't make as much sense, or aren't as equitable to boaters, or maybe have some unintended consequences that folks didn't know about. So let me tell you a little bit about our organization. We are an all-volunteer organization. So our board of directors, our president, vice president like myself, secretary, treasurer, board of directors are all volunteer boaters that just have a passion for boating, for the waters that we are able to boat in around here. And so we're very passionate about representing boaters in our state. Full disclosure, we do have 2 paid employees. Doug Levy is one of them as our lobbyist, and we do have a membership administrator who helps with some of the membership work that goes on to make sure keep everything straight. And if I didn't mention earlier, we are a membership organization. So $20 a year is what an individual membership with RBAW costs. And that's right, 20 a year sounds pretty inexpensive, but there's probably all boaters on this webcast tonight, and we all pinch pennies. And so just to let you know, with that $20, you get to amplify your recreational voice with RBAW, and we support you. But also there's some personal benefit. We've got a great discount plan with fisheries, and who hasn't spent a ton of money at fisheries on their boat, as well as a great towing package from Boat US and a couple other places. So we kind of think if you go to fisheries once or twice, you've probably paid for that $20 RBAW membership. So make sure that you're going to get your money's worth there. Let me focus on real quick the 3 areas that RBAW focuses on. So think about it as boater awareness, boater advocacy, as I mentioned, as well as creating boating opportunities. So when we talk about boating awareness, it's making sure boaters know, kind of what norms are changing, what's going on out there. Did anything change with regards to safety, fire extinguishers, PFDs, engine kill switches, those types of things that we want you to hear about and know about. As we think about awareness as well, Kirk's going to jump in here in a bit and talk about a campaign that RBAW is leaning into to make sure that boaters are aware of certain things on Lake Union. When we think about boating advocacy, as I was mentioning, things happen in the legislature, things happen locally and in counties and cities around the state of Washington that impact boating. And so we want to advocate for what we think is fair and equitable, make sure boaters are considered, or if things are going to change related we boat. We want to make sure that we have a seat at the table, if you will. We have an annual meeting every year, the organizational members, and we present to them kind of our coming year focus areas. You're going to see those when Doug talks about a few updates. And we have our to-do list, and then we take the things that are not and we do our best to handle those and make sure we communicate with our members, keep everyone updated. I see I'm getting an error here that my internet's unstable. Can everybody hear me okay? Should I turn my video off? No? All right, I don't hear any complaints, so I'll keep going. And then the last thing I mentioned, a focus area of ours is boating on.
Yeah, a little breakup there, Andrea. So
Is it?
you want to take over?
Or you need me to turn off my video, or?
Might try that. Yeah.
Okay, video off.
There we go.
Jump in. Okay, there we go. So as I mentioned, when Puget Sound Interclub Association bought Susha, that was creating a boating opportunity or maintaining a boating opportunity that was going to go away. Additionally, we, like I said, we want to excite boaters. And so getting more people out on the water doing what they love, having more marine parks. Those of you in Washington know that there hasn't been a new marina built in a really long time. And we're not exactly sure if that's a thing anymore. So when things go up for sale and maybe become private, we really look closely into those. And those of you in Washington may have seen, gosh, about 3 years ago, we went out and tried to buy Lake Bay Marina. And luckily, about 2.5 years later, we were able to actually close on Lake Bay and donate that to the state of Washington, as we did with Susha Island. So Susha Island sequel, if you will, and make sure in those places that are so precious to be able to access via vote. Don't have to be a member of a club or an organization. You can just go there individually with your family and friends, and they stay with the state, for generations. It's really important to us. Additionally, mooring balls, mooring buoys that appear at state parks and places we think are really important. Our friends up north in Canada have a great stern tie program where have been working with state agencies for a while, talking about that and how it protects the eelgrass from anchorage, from anchors dragging, et cetera. So we're always looking at things that can get more people out on the water, make people happier on the water, et cetera. All those are no regrets moves, if you will, for boating. So those are the 3 areas that we focus on. And, the wrapper around all of those things is really partnerships that RBAW has. They're kind of like the RBAW for the commercial maritime industry. We work on a lot of things together, and those partnerships really continue to amplify our voice of the recreational boater, and make sure that people contemplate and consider these things as they're making decisions, or we take advantage of opportunities that can really get the recreational boater out and going where they want to go. It's not just boaters, but some of the partnerships we've had have really focused on derelict vessels, and Doug's going to give you an update on that. So I don't want to steal his thunder, but if you're on a boat, you don't like derelict vessels, and if you're on land, you really don't like looking at them either. And so we're really proud of our partnership to actually help the state redirect money that they already got from boaters from our tabs that we pay every June to register our boats, just redirecting money that into a fund that helps them hopefully better stay on top of those derelict vessels that have obviously are eyesores, but also can have really some really terrible environmental concerns as well. So that's who we are. That's what we do. If you heard anything that was interesting to you or supportive of what we're doing, we'd love to have you as a member. If you're not already a member today, like I said, it's $20 a year. You can go to RBAW.org. You'll see a join us button. You'll also see some boater news and some updates on things we're working on. Feel free to reference that website too for any information you're looking for. Again, we'd love to have you join. We're always looking for volunteers for our board of directors, and we're looking for people to support us that just have a passion for boating like we do. So that's to hand it over to Kirk Myers, who they did a great job reading off his bio. He's an RBAW member and is supporting our Mind the Zone campaign that he's going to tell you a little bit about on Lake Union. Kirk has been an amazing partner as we've launched this. It's kind of a new area for RBAW, kind of dipping our toe in the water here of some public advocacy related to some state funding. And with that, I will hand it over to Kirk. And I am going to get his slide up here, so bear with me.
Well, pardon me. Thank you, Andrea. So good evening, everybody. Kirk Myers. Excited to be here. I'm actually on Lake Union at the Tyee Yacht Club that I'm a member of. So they do have some waterborne activity behind me. And I will just say that to reinforce Andrea's message, I have really come to know RBAW well, and RBAW at $20 a year is the best value in boating, other than, I'll say, the Waggoner guide itself. So unbridled sales pitch as someone who knows the organization well. So I'm going to talk briefly here before I hand it over to Doug about our Mind the Zone campaign. And as Andrea mentioned, this is some state funding that RBAW received or applied for that was out there to raise awareness here on Lake Union around the Seaplane Advisory Zone. So from Memorial Day to Labor Day each year, there are 5 buoys that are put in place that kind of run north-south from Mohai down the south end of the lake, kind of halfway up, as you can see on the map here, towards Gasworks Park, that are advisory buoys that that help alert boaters and anyone who recreates on Lake Washington, or sorry, on Lake Union, when a seaplane is arriving or taking off. So as a seaplane is coming in, they will actually trigger the buoys, they flash yellow. And what we're working on is really simple. It's just raising awareness among everyone who recreates on Lake Union, whether it's a boater like us, whether it's a paddler, whether it's someone who is just a tourist coming in and renting a hot tub boat or a kayak to get out and enjoy this beautiful heart of Seattle. And so we're excited about this. It's something that is new for RBAW, and the message is be aware, be aware, be courteous, and hopefully that will help us all continue to share the lake well as we look forward to even more of us, loving this beautiful sunshine behind me tonight as we get into an actual summer here. Up here in Seattle. The notes are, when the buoys are flashing, move 200 feet if you can, left or right, east or west of the buoy line. And yes, this is a campaign that we're launching. We're doing a lot of work with the local businesses. Andrea mentioned Northwest Marine Trade Association and all the associated businesses within there, folks who are putting people on the water, and really trying to raise awareness also through social media. So depending on how active you are on social media, please follow us on Instagram at Mind the Zone, or you can follow the RBAW page, which is fantastic, actually. Great information coming through the Facebook page of RBAW that Andrea runs and helps post on Facebook itself, and get this information. And my ask of you is to, of course, be aware. Like I think most of us are more aware than normal, but still there's a chance to learn and to make sure that we understand exactly what this advisory zone looks like, but also spread the word. If you have family members, kids, folks who are getting on the water, this is something that we want to avoid any issues. Let's all see how we can share this and make this all work out. So that's it. We've got a lot of stuff going on with it, but I'll keep it short and sweet, and hand this off to Doug. So stay tuned, and if you're around Lake Union, you'll definitely see a lot more signage and things like that we're working on, partnering with folks like Seattle, other organizations that they're going to help us get this word out. And with that, I will turn from the beautiful sunshine behind me and hand this off to Doug to talk more about RBAW and the legislative activities that RBAW advocates on behalf of all of us as boaters here in Washington.
Well, thanks very much, Kirk and Brian and Leonard and Lorena. I just want to say What an honor to be on this webcast with, I think of Waggoner as sort of the Bible for boaters. And our president at RBAW has kind of joked about our organization as one of the best associations you've never heard of. And I think with Andrea's intro today, hopefully more people will know about the value of RBAW and what we do. It's really an incredible organization that helped launch the first boater education card in the state of Washington. We were one of the first states to have that and spent a few years getting that done in the legislature prior to my arrival. We've worked on boating under the influence laws with law enforcement and Washington State Parks. And we'll go over some of the other items that Andrea referenced, but I've been asked to take a spin for you through what we do to help preserve and open up boating opportunities, what we do to enhance safety. You heard a little bit about Kirk and the efforts on Lake Union, some of our work around funding, and I'll take a question that just came into the chat box, and then our efforts around the marine environment. So we'll cover a few of those, and you guys just tell me give me the high sign when you need to move on to the next part. But the first item I'm going to talk about under boating opportunities as an example for you is Andrews Bay. Andrews Bay is this wonderful jewel at the south end of Lake Washington near the Seward Park neighborhood, for those of you who know Seattle, and across from Mercer Island. It's a part of Lake Washington where there is overnight anchoring still possible. So that makes it unique. It also happens to be a little bit warmer water than other parts of the lake. So Andrews Bay is a real draw in the summer months of Seattle. Sometimes it gets to be such a draw that it will draw 200-300 boaters, and some of them get very excited about being in Andrews Bay, and sometimes they party a little too much and perhaps have a little bit too much fun. And so there have been complaints from time to time from the neighbors. And a couple of years ago, that really increased. And there were some Seward Park area neighborhoods that said, hey, no more boating in Andrews Bay. City of Seattle, we want you to shut it off entirely. And that's where our advocacy efforts kicked in. And I also want to put in a plug for the Northwest Marine Trade Association, who Andrea mentioned. They're the commercial part of recreational boating. They teamed up with us, but we went to the city and we said, hey, most boaters we know are very responsible. They believe in respectful behavior on the water. We want to help preserve Andrews Bay for the long term for boating, and we will work with you, City of Seattle, on a campaign to encourage respectful, safe behavior in the Bay. And so in 2021, we did our first event. We called it an ambassadors event, and our tagline was respectful play in the Bay so we can stay in the Bay. And we took a Seattle City Council member out on the water with us to give her a firsthand look. And we had a whole slug of volunteers over a couple of weekends last summer act as ambassadors for safe and responsible boating and hand out goodies to folks. And we had a drawing for I can't remember if it was Fishery Supply, but one of our retailers. So we had someone who could sign up and take the pledge for safe boating and get a gift certificate out of it. We're going to do that for a second year this summer, starting the weekend of July 22nd through 24th. So we're very proud of our efforts to not only open up, but preserve boating opportunities for folks. And let me segue into another particular area of focus for us in terms of ensuring that safe environment, and that's the Seattle Harbor Patrol. For those of you who might not know Seattle and areas like Lake Union that Kirk just displayed, it is an unbelievable maritime environment. I don't know every city in the United States, but I can't think of many that have a thriving maritime environment, an unbelievable number of recreational boating opportunities, a world-class port, a 75-year-old seaplane company, and all of them doing their thing in the waters of Puget Sound and Lake Union and Lake Washington. And so many years ago, the Seattle Harbor Patrol was conceived as this unit that would have 3 boats to enforce safety and good behavior on the lake. When the idea was that they were going to have one on the waters of Puget Sound, one on the waters of Lake Union, and one on the waters of Lake Washington, about 200 miles of shoreline, if you can imagine that. Well, in recent years, as the Seattle City Council has reacted to some of the defund the police movement in recent years, the Seattle Harbor Patrol has suffered some severe cutbacks. In fact, they're operating with half the personnel they used to. What were about 28 commissioned officers have been more like 15 to 16. And whereas I talked about 3 boats, it's gone down to 1 to patrol all that waterway and all those shoreline areas. So we've stepped in and really worked to add a hue and cry out there and build a coalition to say, this is really important and we want safe boating. And we think the Harbor Patrol is a necessary element to safe boating. And we've had some success with avoiding further cuts to the Harbor Patrol. And now this summer, the city has approved new emphasis patrols that'll be in place every Friday through Sunday in July and August. So we feel really good about that as a step forward in making sure there's a Harbor Patrol to protect those waterfront properties, to make sure people aren't doing crazy things on the water and are boating and paddle boarding and kayaking safely. And so that'll be a continued effort for us. Sort of segueing into the whole funding side, you heard Andrea talk about the watercraft excise tax. It's something that boaters pay, and to the question that came into the chat, boaters pay a watercraft excise tax on the value of their boats. That's once a year. And then they do a vessel registration. I believe it's something on the order of $15, and that's once a year. The vessel registration money tends to go in specialized places like the derelict vessel and invasive species accounts that are very responsive to boating. The watercraft excise tax, and we're the only ones who pay a percentage-based excise tax into the Washington State General Fund anymore. Years ago, through a quirk in the law, that was repealed for cars and planes and travel trailers, but for some reason back in the late 90s, it was kept on the books for boaters. And that goes into the state's general fund. So it's always rankled boaters that, number one, we're still paying this, and number two, it's going into the general fund and we don't know if there's a good return for recreational boating. So we've worked very hard both to prevent any increases in the watercraft excise tax. There was a proposed one a couple of years ago that we and NMTA and others led a campaign to beat back. And secondly, we've said to the state of Washington and agencies like the Department of Natural Resources, we're not thrilled about paying this, but if we're going to pay it, how about if we put it into something that has a direct nexus with boating? And so in particular, we started working very closely with the Department of Natural Resources a couple of years ago on their derelict vessel removal program. Andrea mentioned that, and it's a great program. It's one of the best in the nation at having a real strategy about getting out and identifying and then removing derelict vessels from our waterways and making sure that they don't contaminate our beautiful marine environment and create the kind of eyesores Andrea was talking about. But it's a chronically underfunded program, runs out of money very quickly. There's a part of it that's called the vessel turn-in program, where private entities and ports, if they spot a derelict vessel, they can get it over to shore and turn it in. But that always runs out of money very early. And there tends to be a much slower response on the non-public lands. And that's a big deal to us, of course. So we worked heading into the 2022 session of the legislature with the Department of Natural Resources on a bill where we said, hey, how about if we take a percentage of that money that's already being paid, going into that big black hole we call the Washington State General Fund, how about if we redirect some of that back into the derelict vessel program? And if we can do that, how about if we emphasize more of the vessel turn-in program and responding quickly to non-public lands and getting going on a vessel recycling program, the way other states like Maine have really led the way on. And the Washington State Legislature responded to that. We really had a great deal of success working with DNR and other entities like ports on, it was called House Bill 1700. It passed both chambers of the legislature with fewer than 10 no votes overall, which is almost unheard of. So that's now law. And you see on the slide that Andrea put up that $8.6 million is going to be moved over to the derelict vessel removal program every biennium in the state now. So we're really delighted with that. And that's been a real great victory in our minds. Andrea also mentioned the Lake Bay Marina earlier, and our board really thought of the old days of Sucha Island in the mid 1950s, and with the dearth of new marinas, any marinas being built, our board wanted to kind of return to its roots and say, how can RBAW get back into the game of acquiring marinas that might be in a deteriorated state and going off the books? And the first one we identified was the Lake Bay Marina. If you don't know Washington State very well, it's toward the south end of Puget Sound, the very western edge of Pierce County, what's called the Key Pen Peninsula. And Lake Bay has just an unbelievable history to it. It has a building that's on the historic register. Its days go back all the way to the late 1800s with the mosquito fleet. It was an egg cooperative for deliveries to the East Coast. It had a dance hall, all this wonderful history, but it had been in a sad state recently where state agencies were detecting electrical violations. The Department of Natural Resources said they were in violation of their aquatic lands lease. There were health and safety violations. It was very near the end of its useful life. And we were very concerned that frankly, one of those Microsoft or Amazon millionaires that we happen to have in the state of Washington, and we're glad we do, but they love to acquire waterfront property, right? And so we worried about the Lake Bay Marina going away entirely. And to us, that would have been a real tragedy. And to Andrea's earlier point about finding ways to keep marine environments in the hands of the public, we took on the effort, frankly, in the face of a global pandemic, to acquire Lake Bay. And with partnership with the Department of Natural Resources and a $1.8 million grant from the state, what's called the Recreation and Conservation Office, we did it. We closed on that property at the very end of December 2021. I'm delighted to tell you all that now there's been an extensive cleanup done at Lake Bay. And if you go there now, you'll see a lot of the dilapidated piers being moved out. Some of the derelict vessels that were an eyesore are gone. Now we have to go into a planning process with the nearby community and with other stakeholders and say, what do we want to see there for the long term? And how can we together put the physical improvements into Lake Bay to make it a public treasure forevermore? So that work is underway. One other thing I'll tell you on the environmental side that we're working on, I could go on for quite a while, but you may have seen in the news recently that there was a report done on the 4 lower Snake River dams on the eastern side of Washington State. Again, for those who don't know our state very well, the lower Snake River dams on the Columbia and Snake confluence are part of a network of dams that really fuel an unbelievable array of agriculture and energy production on the east side of our state that fuels so much of our economy and has created unbelievable recreational areas for boating. And there's been some controversy in recent years where, you may have read about other areas where dams were removed. And there are some organizations that have been campaigning for the lower Snake River dams to be removed. So our governor and one of our US senators, Patty Murray, commissioned a consultant called Ross Strategic to do a study and outreach on talking to groups all over the state about how they felt about lower Snake River dam removal. And what it would take if you wanted to do that to replace all the benefits that are inherent with those dams. They just came out with a report, basically said, state of Washington, federal government, if you want to do this, you're probably talking about a $10 to $27 billion set of expenses to replace all the benefits that would go away. And now there's going to be public input to that report. And then a lot of that will go to the federal government, which has to be the ultimate arbiter of what happens. We happen to have a policy position where we think it would be short-sighted to remove the dams at this point, given all the benefits they provide, not only to recreational boating, but as I said, to energy production and agriculture and more. So we'll be very involved in that. Obviously, for our members on the east side of Washington State, that is a huge issue. So I think I'm going to stop there. We're happy to take any questions you may have. And we're, again, just so delighted that you had us on the webcast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Doug and Kirk and Andrea. Great presentation. I see Lisa Samuelson has also joined us. Hello, Lisa. I don't know if you've got your camera or you want to join us there, but good to see you've joined us. And Mark couldn't join us tonight. He's out of range, but any questions from you, Leonard or Lorena, before we wrap up?
One thing that there's a counterpart to RBAW in BC Marine Parks Forever Society, and one of the things that they did about in the last 5 years was to fund putting in a number of stern tie pins so that recreational boaters can make better use, get more boats into the existing facilities. Is that anything that RBAW might have on their radar for the future?
Yeah, I can start on that one.
Go ahead, Doug.
You may want to jump in too, but yes, very much so. We've actually got a couple things going on. We've really worked closely with Washington State Parks on repairs of some of the buoys that had been pulled out of the water, and to their credit, they have repaired. I think they're up to almost 300 buoys that have been repaired and put back in the water. We've also urged them to do a piloting of stern ties, given some of the success in BC, and we've talked about areas like Jones Island that we think would be ideal to try it, because we see that as value added, as Andrea said earlier, over anchoring and perhaps disturbing kelp and eelgrass. So very much that's on our minds, and another one of our work items.
Oh, great. And by the way, then let me say thank you then for anything you did to help the state parks put those buoys back. There were so many of those buoys that were either missing, out of place, or were in such sad shape that people couldn't use them. And a very, very necessary piece for us right now. If DNR can be in adding some more buoys, that would be great too. But more and more, as you Doug, early on, you said we need to keep all the marinas we have, and we need to have some more places for boaters to go. There are a lot more boaters out there. Everybody wants to go someplace, but we still have about the same number of places, or even fewer in some cases. So anything you can do in that is very welcome. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, well, we appreciate the presentation and everything you, RBAW team, have done and continue to do for all of us out there. And sad to say, this will be our last episode until September. I get a little emotional that I won't be seeing Leonard and Lorena every Thursday night. I look forward to this. It's a lot of fun to catch up with everybody. But we are full into boating season now, so we're going to let everybody enjoy the summer. I know, Leonard and Lorena, you're going to be busy. Where are you headed the next couple weeks?
We're headed a little bit further north. We want to head up. There's a Spirit Bear area, and this is Kynoch Inlet area, and there have been some changes on that. There's a number of conservancy areas up here in northern BC. There's a movement has been in place for a number of years to preserve this area that is a native first growth timber area, fishing area, and there's wonderful efforts to keep that in its native state. And they're also integrating the First Nations back into the process. So there's a number of places that used to be widely open, or I shouldn't say widely open, they were open to recreational boaters to head in there and enjoy these things. And in some cases, there might have been too many boats going in there. And so there's some efforts now to have watchmen there. And these watchmen are more than just watching something, but they're helping you enjoy that facility and understand what nature is like and why it's there and what the history might be. And so we're going to go research that a little bit. There's some watchman areas now, areas that used to not have anybody in there. So we want to find out what's going on, do some research for the Waggoner.
That's great.
Also,
Go ahead,
also
Lorena.
visit springs and check those out as well.
That sounds fun. Well, not only do we appreciate RBAW, we appreciate the two of you and Mark as well. I mean, we're so lucky to have you and all the contributions you have, from the bakeries to the marinas to, I mean, nobody does it better than you two. So, I mean, this is fun, but it's also work for you, right?
That's right. Yeah, it does take time. It's keep moving along quickly, not a lot of relaxing, because we want to get the most out of our time so we can give that to the boaters out there who do enjoy some relaxing times in special places.
Well, we appreciate you, and I want to wish you safe travels the next couple months. We'll reconvene in mid-September. Until then, happy Canada Day to all our friends across Canada tomorrow. And it's the 4th of July coming up this weekend and on Monday. So be safe out there, and we'll see you again in September. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.